Welcome back to Session 0, where I discuss Dungeon World and other RPG topics. I'm starting a new series today called Monster Talk, in which I discuss some of my favorite monsters in Dungeon World, how I'd use them, how I'd customize them, and what some other games have to say about them. Today's video is the Basilisk. Okay, let's start in the Dungeon World Rulebook on page 243 and see what modifications I'd like to make, if any. I'll probably say this in each video in the series. These monsters as written are not set in stone. Modify them for your playstyle. The Basilisk is a solitary hoarder with a D10 close bite, which is pretty stout. 12 hit points and 2 armor means it'll likely take 2 or more good hits to bring down. Without a size tag, it's a medium creature, which is how D&D 3.5, Pathfinder 1st Edition, and D&D 5e classify them. But the D&D 4th Edition classifies them as large, so there's definitely some precedent for kicking them up a size. The description in Dungeon World, and the art in all of the aforementioned books, depict this monster as a lizard-like creature with between 6 and 8 legs. But if you like the Basilisk in Chamber of Secrets, go ahead and make it a big snake. It's your game, and it's pretty darn cool. I'm not a big fan of the instinct here. Each monster has an instinct that describes its goal at a high level. I don't think a Basilisk's goal is to create statues because it's not intelligent. It doesn't think in terms of, I can turn people into statues. I'd probably make its instinct to eat tasty stone, and then rewrite the first move to turn someone into tasty stone with a gaze. Instinct is how it thinks, moves are what it does. I'd also add vomit rubble, which can be pretty useful, and you'll see why when I get to the mechanics section. Retreat into a maze of stone is a really flavorful move. The stone in that maze is people it hasn't eaten yet, but maybe it's nibbled a bit here and there. You can have a lot of fun with the way you describe Basilisk's lair. Speaking of lairs, Dungeon World lists them as swamp denizens, but the D&D and Pathfinder books pretty much combine to say they live wherever you want them to. Cragmaw Hideout from the Lost Mine of Phandelver could make a really good Basilisk lair, I think. Now I want to jot down a few ideas for narrative uses for a Basilisk. The Dungeon World entry doesn't touch on it, but all of the other books I've talked about mention capturing or taming basilisks, or using them to guard treasure in the wild. A villain or one of their lieutenants may have a guard basilisk. Maybe X marks the spot to a buried treasure near a basilisk lair. Anytime the characters are looking for someone, consider that the person may have been petrified by a basilisk. They could be looking for this person because they have needed information, they're carrying an item the party is looking for, or maybe it's just a missing person or even one of a string of missing people. When it comes to unpetrifying someone, Dungeon World doesn't really offer much that'll do the job. Maybe the cleric spell Resurrection could perform that function, and surely a wizard's ritual can accomplish it too. The Pathfinder entry for a Basilisk mentions using their blood to unpetrify someone, and the 5e Monster Manual tells of alchemists using the Basilisk gullet for the same purpose. Of course, the harvesting or collection of Basilisk blood to unpetrify someone could be the goal of an entire adventure. Finally, let's look at some mechanical uses for a Basilisk. The first thing I want to talk about is Defy Danger, because I think this should be used quite often when dealing with the Basilisk. It has a powerful move which turns people to stone, but I don't think that's a passive ability. Seeing someone as passive, by turning them to stone with a gaze, should be a quote-unquote action. So I think a major danger specific to a Basilisk is drawing its attention. It can't use its gaze action on someone until it has already had its attention drawn to them. Knowing this can help you make good use of give an opportunity that fits a class's abilities, show a downside to their class, race, or equipment, offer an opportunity with or without a cost, put someone in a spot, and the move I use most often, which is tell them the requirements or consequences and ask. There will be other dangers to defy as well, but that's a big one you need to put some thought into. When employing the use a monster, danger, or location move, think carefully about using the turn someone into tasty stone with a gaze move. That's the Basilisk's nuclear option in my opinion, and should only be used when players refuse to properly respect the danger in which they find themselves. Retreat into a maze of stone is an escape option, and vomit rubble can be used multiple ways. Offensively, to deal damage, either directly or by creating places where a character might twist their ankle on unstable, rubble-strewn ground. Defensively, to turn their move back on them in some interesting ways. And to show signs of an approaching threat, as I can imagine it would be quite loud. I think it's obvious that you can reveal an unwelcome truth by showing lifelike statues in various expressions of fear. Going back to vomit rubble, it can be useful for shaping the Basilisk's lair. A spider makes a web to trap insects, so how about a Basilisk that makes stone mazes to trap people? A stone maze makes a great place to separate them. You can use up their resources by breaking bladed weapons on their stone-like hide, but also anything might fall out of a pack when being chased across loose rubble. Finally, I'm always looking for interesting ways to turn their move back on them, and I named a few earlier. This one really comes down to what move the character is making and how hard you want to react. The best advice I can give for this one is to prepare by reading over and or modifying the Basilisk, decide what you want to use them for in your game, and putting some thought into the location where they'll be encountered. This is valuable prep to exploit during play. Alright, that's it for the Basilisk. Tell me in the comments below how you'd modify this monster. You know what to do if you enjoy my content. Thanks for watching, and as always, have a great day.